the reason I tell you all this is 2027. This is a significant year. We are going to start to do away with American physical US dollars. During the time of 2027, that year, they're going to give you in the beginning of the year, the warning or the happy announcement that you're going to have to turn in your paper money. And that paper money will be converted to a digital dollar. You're going to come into the USD stablecoin of your bank of your choice. Usually the top 12 big banks in America are going to be issuing these stablecoins for the government as well as their own stablecoins. For like JP Morgan has its own stablecoin. Bank of America has its own stablecoin. Wells Fargo has its own. All right, so these all have their own stablecoins based on the value of these banks and the assets they hold in the banks, like a house title. They could say David's house and land is worth this much, and we can do a 1-to-1 for that, so we can issue stable coins based on David's land. And each bank's going to issue their own, but then they're also going to have another layer behind, which is our government's debt stable coins, which is a 1-to-1 based on like national land holdings and mining rights and all these things, oil reserves inside the ground, whatever. You are going to have to turn in your money. But here's where it gets scary, because I know they're not just going to go, oh, great, here's 20 grand in cash. They're probably going to want accounting for every single dollar of it in your tax through all the times you've worked. I was, hey, I squirrel money away, because I don't trust the system. So every paycheck I've been saving $200 for the last 15 years. And I have 20 grand now, or whatever you want to do with your math on that. And they're going to go, well, no, we need to see receipts where all your money came from. And we can't change you in because you don't have the receipts for this, which turns into the black market somewhere because somebody's going to want to get in on it. But you can't, because it's digital at that point and everything's tracked and traced. Like these next couple of years, winding into 2030 with the Agenda 2030 sustainability goals, in addition to the transition of our cash in 2027, is the best of my knowledge and the most up-to-date information that I have as of yesterday. 2027 is the start point where we get rid of the physical money in our country. And everything at that point goes digital from that moment along, I saw it happen to the kuna over in Croatia when I was traveling there. It was sad to see all those people lost their money. They couldn't get into the banks, and the banks weren't open enough to get everybody, and they got boxes of money, and it's just worthless at the end of that. So if you don't cash your dollars in, they're going to be worth zero at the end of that. If you don't get the digital equivalent, all that paper money could be hundreds. It doesn't matter. They're going to zero if you don't cash it in. So then what? Then, then it comes to the world where Ransom and I are talking about here. You are going to be tightly controlled. And by the way, Starlink went down today completely globally. The entire global network of Starlink went down. So if you think, well, I'll just be like a global citizen and hop on Starlink because I don't have to go through the hoops and hurdles of signing on to my local internet and getting the ISP with a digital retinal scan so I can get online. I'll just go to Starlink. They just shown the vulnerability of that entire global network being down. Something very, very wrong is happening. That was supposed to be the darling, child of communications, track and trace. And this is how they were monitoring forests and how they were going to do carbon sequestration credits by covering every square inch of the earth. Part of that was just not communications up there. Part of that was with LiDAR scanning the forests. So every square inch of our planet was being utilized in terms of giving it value. This is where the stablecoin issuance comes in, because if they can measure out every square meter of our earth, then there can be a price associated with that. Whether it's a grassland and they give you $1 per acre on the sequestration on straight grass, and then you let it grow for another 2 years, and then they give you $4 an acre because it's got some taller, smaller saplings growing on it. And then after 5 years, you get a different rate of, I think it's $12. And then it goes on from there until you get to old growth, or like what you consider 100-year-old forests, where you're getting like $200 an acre. Like every single step of this is going to be mapped out and on a digital system, paid, swapped around. And, I feel sad for a lot of people. They don't understand this is coming, and they don't even, like, I'm speaking, I could be reading these hieroglyphs behind me, even talking about digital transference. And I got some Bank for International Settlements here too, on the way they're going to the Pine Project. So this is what The workings of our world are moving to from here. The central bank is on the far left there. And they don't really tell you if it's the Bank for International Settlements or if it's the World Bank or International Monetary Fund, or if it's actually central banks of each individual nation. But then they're the ones that are going to issue. So we're beyond now debt in terms of American debt or UK debt or whatever, Canadian debt. It is going to a central bank, and I think it's going to be more on the global level because they keep pushing this whole global everything. They're going to be the one that are going to issue anything financial from that point. And it's all going to be on the blockchain. So here's your flow model of how it works. They're going to be digitizing securities. They're going to digitize real estate. They're digitizing all financial instruments, whatever that entails. Anything that could have a financial backing to it that can be swapped out. And then that finally makes it to your bank, what I'm talking about, the JP Morgan stablecoins. And then it moves from there. So this whole JP Morgan thing today, also, they were saying that they want to issue loans against your crypto. So a lot of people are offering Bitcoin backed loans. They don't even check your credit. You got Bitcoin. It's like a tier one capital. It's like walking in with a bar of gold. I don't care what your previous history was, bro. You got a kilogram of gold, I'll give you a loan. Give me that brick of gold and we'll back it. And I don't care what you did in your past. You got a kilogram of gold bar right there. I'll give you a loan. Same thing with Bitcoin. So a lot of like Arch Capital and Lantern Finance, and there's a whole bunch of other ones out there that were saying, give us a Bitcoin. You can take up to like 50% of the Bitcoin's value. We'll give you a loan. Just Bitcoin. I don't care what you did. We'll give you 50 grand, or it's 60 now because it's at $1.20, $1.20 and 120,000. But JP Morgan wants you to do the same thing. Now, just with a straight face, JP Morgan wants you to give your keys to your Bitcoin to JP Morgan, and they want to give you a loan against that. Now, do you think they're ever going to give you your Bitcoin back? Never. I could never, even in my wildest dreams, consider giving any crypto to JP Morgan to get a loan. But this is where that whole flow is right there, that blue, those blue circles. And then it comes down to the assets, and you see that little tiny green dot way down there. That's you sandwiched between the corporations over there. That little green dot is you. Everything else is that behemoth of instruments around you, all digital. So if you don't want to play in their world, then there's going to be no other way. So this is what I don't like, because we're all getting trapped into this thing. There's not I don't know if there's going to be another way to get out of this, because everywhere you look, there's no way to escape this so encompassing machine. Even if you're paying property taxes, that's going to go digital, where you're going to have to. Now, some states have said gold and silver is going to be good to pay property tax. But at what point can't you even operate to even go into a store, because your biometrics are going to be scanned, and you're going to have to use the stable coin of the country or the banks that issue that for you to even be able to buy anything, because they won't take your round of silver in a supermarket. That's going to be 100% digital. It just, how are you going to do, unless you deal just in the farm community? But you're going to need to buy petrol, or you're going to need repair parts. You're going to need to get some lumber for repairs. Oh, no, sorry. Home Depot only takes USD stable coins now. What are you going to do? Like the net is really starting to get tight right now. So for me, with the equivalent balance of global crop yields declining to the point of famine and social unrest, the clamping and control needs to tighten as fast as that crop yield declines are being noticed by the general populace. So there's this teeter-totter balance. You teeter-totter as a kid, you try to stay in balance there. Well, this balance moving forward is governments understand hungry people do crazy and strange things. So the crop losses and the amount of food price rises that will spark civil unrest is going to be matched by the amount of control put on top of the populace in advance to stop that from occurring to the level where it will be uncontrollable. So for me right now, I'm going, it's getting dangerously close to our food prices are going to get so astronomically ridiculous at the end of this harvest season here, when it comes in really 10%, 15% under what they were predicting. And then you'll start to see why there's so much control coming down, because they might feed us this story about, oh, it's better technology, it's instant settlements, it's this, it's that. for your convenience, and we can track, and there'll be no whatever they money laundering or bribery from the politicians. Okay. But what it really is, I think, is a soft rationing system that is being put in place in front of the food shortages. So you come at it from that way, because if you're going to have to sell the populace on, by the way, we're coming into global food shortages and we're going to need to give you these rationing cards, nobody's going to buy that. But if you come at it with, hey, we got all these digital stable coins, and you're going to have biometrics to get in the supermarkets, and it's going to be so much safer, and this and that. See, they're laying the groundwork for it to be nothing more than a digital rationing card tied to your social credit score and your compliance. So, looking at this set of variables, one leads the other. And I'm going to say absolutely the control mechanism that's being put forth to control money, access to food, and mobility, ability to travel, is front running. The control mechanism of that, the tightening of it, is front running where we're sitting on the global crop yield declines. So I would say, about a year ish, because if you've been following this since the COVID time, we got some incredible crop losses in 2019 and 20. It started to spike those food prices anyway. The global financial system was failing. The overnight repo market was almost $1 trillion a night. They needed a loan into the market so the financial system wouldn't collapse. That was 2019 in November. And then 2020, what happened with the COVID, everything locked down, endless money printing, nobody asked a question. But what came in at that time too was a lot of awareness. They kept blaming the crop yields on people not being able to get in the fields. Or was it the magnetic field and the jet streams changing? And then we start to see there's really a lot less people wandering around these days. So there's less mouths to feed, and maybe that was a balancing mechanism for a minute. But we've reached that rollover point again where global crop yields are not equivalent to the mouths to feed. Some areas are hit harder than others. The rice crop this year, at least 10%. But that's a major staple crop for a lot of, Asian nations and Africa. We're more on the wheat side over here. So at what point do governments come to the point where they need to start controlling who has access to food under the guise of a new system to prevent the people from overthrowing the system? Because, Al, every time I look in history, there's no way that governments survive angry mobs that are hungry. They'll survive angry mobs, no question. You just throw the police out there, eventually they'll stop protesting or whatever. But if they're hungry, they will never stop protesting, because the only thing driving them to the protest is the hunger. And unless you can stop the hunger, you will never stop the uprising. So that's got its own feedback loop in it. So if you knew that was coming, you would definitely tighten the reins of control in advance. And I really believe and see this, and all the data is showing that these repeating cycles and the data and all these metrics and these log scales are showing that we're coming up to something on a rollover anyway, on just pure data points, that we've hit sort of a wall. And then you start to throw that last magic sprinkled ingredient of how much food's available. And then I think that's the alchemical ingredient that gives it the wow super secret sauce, because something has gone terribly awry where suddenly the world needs this, the governments need this much control of all the citizens on the planet. They need to know where they are and give them a new money system and allow them only to go into some places, only if they show their retinas. That's bizarro world. Why did it switch so quick? That should be another thing. You can't tell me the world switched that much in 5 years. And in the last 150, it was creeping along unchanged. A couple world wars in here, some new technology from the radios and telephones and things, air conditioners. But you're telling me in 5 years, we switched the world and squeezed it so hard, so fast, that we haven't seen anything like this. I don't know, the collapse of the Roman Empire, maybe. Something in the bubonic plague, perhaps. But it switched so fast in 5 years or under. We are in a completely different operating system, and you need to, you got to step back objectively and say, why would they make this much change so sloppily at this time. Someone bought us another. Thank you for the triple double espresso. Thank you, BBB. Allison Bevege, listening from Australia. Love your show. You two do great work. Letters from Australia on Substack. Well, thank you. We'll pass it along. Hopefully, go over there, check it out. I'll check it out after the show. Rhonda Holub, thank you for the 5 double espressos. Well, thank you for that. And Catherine Barlow telling us keep up the good work. Someone again hitting us with the triple double espresso. We'll be shaking at the end of the night with 6 double espressos in us. But anyway, Ransom, any thoughts to follow up on debt or what you think is going to happen when we can't pay our bills? And then it's so obvious that we can't. And then the food shortages hit at the same time. And we get like these 2 massive events overlaying in history, which we never see, usually 2 at the same time. It's 1. But 2, I don't know how it might play out.
You threw a lot of ideas out there, and it just works right into kind of where I was going with this. Not so much the AI. The AI is just the tool right now to shape the way things are going.
Yeah.
And it all intertwines with kind of what you were saying. You brought up this concept about price based on your individual, like who you are, your identity, the price varying on who that is. And if you just kind of wider think of this technological plan that's going on, let me see if I could just roll to an idea and get to the point kind of fast here. So you got this. All right. This was the topic, who gets to decide what you're thinking, what you know, when you know it, and why and where. And that kind of leads into what you were talking about. We just had this Starlink thing go down, right? So all those people that were kind of using that just out one day. But that's okay because there's always redundant backup plans. Right here, scientists achieve record 4 Gbps internet using OLED display technology. So basically this is Wi-Fi, right? And this is the future. It's not just Wi-Fi, it's Li-Fi, which is something that we've talked about the concept many times over the past couple of years, that they could transmit and receive internet just through the LED lights in your home. So let's get to a weird thing here, a weird idea here. Now keep in mind that now most people's houses, or at least modern homes, are now moving to the end of smart houses, not just smart appliances, but smart houses, right? So you have these smart houses, smart cars, smart everything. But there's a counter to every technology. Here's millions of cars at risk from Flipper Zero, a key fob hack, experts warn. And these are kind of old, but this is like a newer, modern one from Russia that just basically unlocks any car. So any car that it goes up to, it can just instantly unlock it, open the trunk, open the doors, open everything that has to do with the security. Now let's move on to this. I keep that idea in mind. I know it's hard to follow along sometimes with me, but Ukraine drone mega deal possible with the U.S., Zelensky says. And this is a massive contract with the United States to get the United States in the game, just like the counterpart that's doing the most of this, which is Russia and China. So keep that in mind. But remember that key fob idea. It's not just a key fob, it's the technology to unlock codes, access passwords, frequencies that make things do stuff. This is all travels in the infrared, just like your phone that's taking millions of pictures of you a day and keeping a 3-dimensional spatial awareness for the computer of every place that you go, everything that you do. And then that moves over to the smart appliances. They're all intertwined. It's all going to be one network. And then you got this. You think they can't hack these big things like your financial database, the banking system, the power grid, all of this stuff? Of course they can. If you can make a key fob that can unlock any car, you can unlock any of these systems that run these, a lot of them going over to AI control and operation. Here's another article. China-linked hackers breach U.S. nuclear weapons agency in sophisticated operation. But what they leave out of the article is not telling you that most of the parts in the computers and all of this stuff were made in China in the first place. So our entire surveillance apparatus is tied in with China's surveillance apparatus to the point that I don't think that we're doing anything secret over here in the United States anymore. You want to know how they get all that intellectual property and copy everything? It's because they're tapped into everything, just like the US is also tapped into everything that they can get their hands in over there. That's why they need and have to have the trade between these nations so they can slip in these things. And now it's going to a new sophisticated level. Imagine, I don't know what the reason for the Starlink outage is, but imagine somebody hacked that entire network and just turned it off, which is something that they could do to the power grid. And, you might want to upgrade the power grid if it keeps going out. Largest U.S. power grid issues, max generation alert. They can't promise in 13 states that the power is going to stay on. Here's another one. No spare capacity. Watchdog warns largest U.S. grid is maxed out amid data center build out, right? There, it ties into the AI and the data right there. And then over here,
But they get
Pepco.
priority there, Ransom. Like you and me as a customer down the edge of that, those data centers get priority over you or
Right.
me. We're the last ones on the totem pole, literally at the bottom there. Everybody else above us.
And I'm pretty sure that this is where it's going to go right here. This looks unrelated, but it's not unrelated because all of these old grids are going to have to be replaced, and they're going to sell this idea that to use all your trinkets, all your smart devices, that you have to upgrade your house to be a smart house, or at least have a smart meter that goes in there. So you're going to have to deal with power outages while they upgrade to the new system, where they also install these new programs that run everything. So every one of your devices, every one of your appliances, your car, everything is now tied into this network of Li-Fi. Right? Basically, it's light internet. So it won't matter if the satellites are up or not. Every device creates its own internet of things already, and this is where it's going. You're not going to be able to have this new world where wealth is kind of based on an individual or maybe even the nation as a whole. So now you're going to have, things in your house like your refrigerator checking what foods what come through there, so it'll know what to hike prices up with in the entire like the nation economy. So like when you go to the grocery store, after a while, they're going to be having all of these millions and millions of people under data surveillance that says exactly what they buy the most, when they buy it, and they can change the prices, not only based on the individual household, knowing which people buy what and how much of, but as a whole economy wide price hike for certain items they know people are going to buy more often, because they know that because the metadata coming from their smart appliances in this new network will be telling everything that you do, how often you wash your clothes, how much water you use. And the electricity will then be based on not only your needs at your home, but your credit score. That's a digital credit score tied to digital money. And think about this. How do you make the money that's out there, if there's only a quantified amount, be more valuable? Well, a lot of people think about deflation, inflation, but the same thing can be said when it comes to humans, the population itself. Now, the US birth rate hits all-time low, CDC data shows, but that's just a drop in the bucket compared to all of the other Western nations having fertility problems, I should say sterility problems, but not just that, a super aging population. And I've talked about this many times. There's always been this hoax out there that there's overpopulation on the world, and instead it's actually overpopulation density in locations only, like in New York City or Beijing or places like that. It's overpopulation in the area. But the problem is that since we've had technology and better medications and things like that, lifespan started to go up. So inevitably, an older population arose from that. And we're not the only ones. Here's this right here. This is the 2025 population forecast by Tinsqua. You should probably say this right here before I mess it
Oh,
up.
let me read. I can't read this screen. Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, there it goes. It's
Oh, that's
the
Tsinghua University. Yeah, it's Tsinghua.
So I got the PDF. I couldn't read Chinese, but this is a good breakdown of it in English. And basically, it's talking about their elderly population dwindling, low fertility scenarios, things like that, aging population, 65 plus population will reach 319 million. And basically, when you go through all this data, you find out that China is about to be 750 million people less by the end of 2040. So they'll be more on par with the population of the United States as is now, except for we also are going to have similar losses here. They're going to have similar losses in the Western world. So what you're going to have is the people that actually own and maintain wealth right now are going to slowly disappear over the next decade and a half, to where only younger and younger populations are in competition for digital money. It's all going to be based on who you are, where you are, and like you were talking about, it fits into this fractionalized wealth system where they just decide how much inherited wealth you own, like what properties you have, how many cars you have. And at some point, they're going to make everyone roll over to this new system that can't be done unless you get rid of the old products. Everything has to go. So they're going to start outlawing older things, saying that, well, in an easy way, I thought that would happen is if your appliance or whatever doesn't work with your old style stuff. So, like if you got an old refrigerator, they're going to say, well, you're running this old thing at your house, and we know that through the electricity. You got to turn that off because, we got to save the planet. We got to reduce the energy consumption. You got to have a smart thing by this year. And you'll start seeing that happen. It's the same reason that they tried to phase out the gas stoves. It wasn't about that the gas was bad for the planet. It's the fact that you don't need microchips and a network to run a gas stove. It's just gas, heat, food's cooked. That's it. All of that kind of stuff is going to be moved away. They may
Well, I'm
even
sure they
pass
could.
laws to make it
Well, I'm sure
illegal.
they could see what's in your fridge too. In terms of, again, that's going to peg you into a certain category of persons if you have a certain types of meats or yogurts or fruit and vegetable in your refrigerator compared to just ice cream, store bought, pre-processed foods. You're going to get into a different category of, again, health risk, insurance wise.